And every time our world goes through a technological transformation, there is some worker and employment anxiety. We want humans to retain agency, but how do we retain the agency where we have machines doing most of the cognitive work? White collar jobs are going to go first. What do we say to that 45-year-old middle manager at the regional bank after he reads your book this summer?
The world's going to split into two. There's going to be a group of consumers who are sitting on their couch, drinking a beer brought by their Optimus robot, watching Netflix that's been created starring their family members, fully AI virtualized. And there'd be those of the creators using AI to go and build Star Trek. That's the question. What do we do with this technology?
Welcome to Open Book. I am your host, Anthony Scaramucci. Joining us today, a dear friend, brother, although you're taking so many supplements now at this point in your life. You're my younger brother. I used to be able to say you were my older brother, but now you're probably a lot younger than me. Peter Diamandis, New York Times best-selling author and founder of over 25 companies in the area of AI, health, tech, space, venture capital, and education. But he's the chief optimist of the United States of America. The title of his new book is We Are as Gods, a survival guide for the age of abundance. And of course, he wrote a book a while back called The Age of Abundance, which I loved and often reference. Now, I see you as our optimist in chief, Peter. So it's great to have you here. And you and I have a 20-plus year relationship. We both grew up on Long Island. We're both the tallest people in our families. Let's put it that way, Peter. How's that? Okay, we're not necessarily tall as it relates to the universe, but at least in our families, we're very large, Peter. But anyway, tell me a little bit about how you got into all of this, and welcome to the show.
Dr. Scaramucci, a pleasure. I've got 2 universities. I'm giving out doctorate degrees. I'm going to give you 2 because you're that good.
Trust me, it wouldn't help me at home. No one would care. But anyway, I appreciate the thought.
I understand. I know my kids still make fun of the fact that I barely graduated medical school. This is probably the most extraordinary time ever to be alive. You wake up and there's a dozen miracles every morning. And it's hard to keep pace with the speed of change. And at the same time, I think one of the things that my co-author Stephen Kotler and I wrote about in Abundance, that there is nothing truly scarce, that we are heading towards a world where we're giving access to food, water, energy, healthcare, education to every man, woman, and child on the planet has become even more and more true. We wrote Abundance in 2012, and that was not a buzzword. Today, it's a buzzword by, I think, every technologist out there. It is technology making this all happen. It's not better politicians. We haven't gotten smarter. It's technology making stuff that was not available to everybody.
I want to say something to you. I'm going to make a stipulation and see if you agree with me or disagree with me. So I feel like we've gone haywire with our politics. I feel like we've lost our way. We've racked up a tremendous amount of debt, not held on U.S. balance sheet, $31 trillion. If you add what's held by the Federal Reserve, it's $37 trillion of debt. We've racked it up in a very short period of time. And we're in a tribal war. But yet 5,000 years of human progress and 5,000 years of technology, we're about to go exponential on a number of different things that could lead us to this wild wave of abundance. We've heard Elon Musk talk about it. We've heard you talk about it. And so I guess the question is, one, will the technology, will human innovation and entrepreneurship bail us all out of our dysfunctional politics? And then number 2, Peter, related to that question, how do we make this fair for the human population so we don't just have a group of trillionaires and then our fellow travelers on this little planet suffering at the same time?
Yeah, important questions. We address those questions in part in our book, We Are as Gods. I avoid politics, pal. You dive in. I avoid politics. I focus on technology as the mechanism for us to deal with most of the issues out there. We do have 200,000 years of primal brain structure, right? We became Homo sapiens 200,000 years ago, and our brains evolved for dealing with that world where things were local and linear and things did not affect you, more than a day's walk, and nothing changed over the course of thousands of years, let alone, hour to hour, day to day. And so our brain evolved for that. And one of the things we talk about in the book is the importance of choosing your mindset. Mindsets, I think, are the most important things we have. We're not going to change our physiology or biology in the moment, but we can change the way we see the world. And I talk about the importance, especially during this period of hyper AI growth, that you need, I talk about 5 key mindsets. You need 2 of them right now. A purpose-driven mindset, like why are you on this planet? What is your purpose? Unless you've got that North Star, and you have this incredible power coming from AI, you're not going to harness it to go in a particular direction. We like fulfillment. We like knowing that we've made progress towards a goal. And having a purpose-driven mindset is an important part of that. The second mindset I talk about is a curiosity mindset. The number of questions we ask as a child, like our, 100 per hour, it drops off to like 0 per day as we become adults. So having a curiosity mindset, especially in this time when AI is your ultimate teacher, you can learn anything on your own for free, any time of the day, anywhere you are. Having a curiosity mindset so that you're constantly learning is critical. And then I talk about moonshot mindsets, an abundance mindset. There's nothing truly scarce. So shaping our mindsets, actively shaping our mindsets, is the only tool we have right now during this period of rapid growth. To the other parts of the question, I think that AI has the potential to help humanity survive over the course of the next decade and decades. I think the more intelligent AI is, the more wisdom it has. You go and talk to a wisdom council or a wise elder because they have a lot of experience. I think AI is going to be able to create such incredible simulations of what's going on that's going to be able to say, listen, go down this way, you're screwed. Go down this way, we have a real chance of success. And that's wisdom. I forgot the second question you had, but
just about how do we make it fair? I mean, you don't have to answer the political question. You know what I mean? Because I'm worried. We've got it. And by the way, I'm all about unequal outcomes, Peter. People that make Elon Musk is a hero of mine, as is Jeff Bezos. I'm all about unequal outcomes. I would like there to be a platform of equal opportunity. And I think AI, educational services that can be provided by AI and other things may be able to help us equalize the playing field, depending on what family you grow up in. But I'm just wondering how we make it fair so that we don't just have a group of people that are worth a couple $1 trillion and the other people are not doing well. That's all.
A really important question. And again, something we deal with in the book. And it's the realization that, you go back 10, 20,000 years, go back 2,000, 3,000 years, it was the emperor on the hilltop, right? The pharaoh, the king, whatever you want, and everyone else in abject squalor. It was just one or a single family, and then everybody else was working, toiling to survive and to provide for that pharaoh. Over the last, hundreds and thousands of years, we've moved people from extreme poverty into middle class. And the numbers are very important. In the back of the book, we've got 100 charts that I've tracked in terms of increasing abundance in the world. The data is there. And the problem is that all the news media around the world is only feeding us negative news all the time. And so that's all you ever see, right? I call CNN the crisis news network, or the constantly negative news network, what do you want to call it? So what we've seen is that the floor has been moving up. Now, I think where we're going is, yes, there are going to be trillionaires living on Mars forever, right? And that's okay if at the same time we've moved every man, woman, and child on the planet up to a point where they have access to all the food, water, energy, healthcare, education that they want. And I think we have the ability to do that. We have been doing that. The numbers and the charts in the back of the book, definitively demonstrate that in terms of access to literacy, access to food, dropping in malnutrition, dropping in childhood deaths, increase in energy, increase in communication. Heck, the most powerful technology on the planet, right, is AI. It's intelligence, and it's available for free with anyone with a smartphone. And guess what? There are more smartphones on the planet than there are humans. So we're moving in this direction. We just don't realize it. Yes, the wealth gap is increasing, but at the same time that it's increasing, the floor is moving up above that key threshold.
Thank you for tuning into Open Book. And if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button below so that you're the first to know when our new episodes drop each week. We got a lot more coming. And now back to the show. Okay, I think it's very well said, and it's actually very comforting. So in the 1968, Dr. Diamandis, Stuart Brand wrote, "We are as gods, and we might as well get good at it." He wrote this in 1968, but you and Stephen are arguing that this prophecy is actually arriving. Okay, I'm going to mention a couple of things that you mention in the book: gene editing, synthetic minds, life extension, terraforming. Okay, so what was the moment, the headline, the lab visit, where you said to yourself, okay, we've crossed the line, and I now have to write this book. I have to pull us from 1968 to today?
So Stuart Brand's an amazing human being, and he wrote this back then before we'd landed on the moon. This concept of what is godlike, and I'm not using that religiously, I'm using that metaphorically, omniscience, you can know anything, omnipotence, you can do anything, omnipresence, you can be anywhere. And these tools right now are called, Google or ChatGPT or Zoom. The fact of the matter is we have these godlike powers. And now the question is, what are you going to do with it? The world's going to split into two. There's going to be a group of consumers who are sitting on their couch, drinking a beer brought by their Optimus robot, watching Netflix that's been created starring their family members, fully AI virtualized. And there'd be those are the creators using AI to go and build Star Trek. And so, I think that's the question. What do we do with this technology? And I think this book came together as let's do it 2 years ago. And part of it was we'd written Abundance, the Future is Better Than You Think back in 2012 when no one was talking about abundance. And now everyone is. And the fact of the matter is abundance has become the norm. We've seen this, and we speak about what's happened over the last 14 years. The other thing we speak about in the book is the negative elements of abundance. There's too much abundance of carbon or microplastics or depression or obesity. These are the negative externalities coming off of this. It's happening at not a constant rate. It's an accelerating rate. And I think people don't realize how fast it's moving.
This podcast is all about books, and while we're on that subject, I have a new book coming out this September called All the Wrong Moves. It's a personal look at how we got to this moment in America through big decisions, bad bets, and a lot of political misfires. I've had a front row seat for plenty of it, and I wrote All the Wrong Moves to try to make sense of where we are and, more importantly, how we can move forward. It's available for pre-order now. We'll drop some links in the description below, and I'm excited for you to read it. I hope you'll consider buying it. I want to tell you something that you've done for me, which I'm very grateful for. I attended Singularity University in 2015. I have a notebook from that time there, and you laid out the decade ahead. And so it's now 2026. It's 12 years later, and everything you said in there happened. Okay, you talked about AI. We didn't really have AI in 2014. You talked about the emergence of Bitcoin as becoming a digital currency that would eventually be perceived as a store of value. You talked about product design. You talked about the aesthetic.
Autonomous cars, energy.
Autonomous cars, all of this stuff you talked about at that moment. And now you're talking about something else that is coming. Okay. And that is, and I'm going to say it this way because I took it out of the book: old miracles, omnipresence, even resurrection becoming standard operating procedure. So are we talking about digital twins, cryonics, mind uploading?
So
What are we talking about? And are you personally, Peter Diamandis, planning for it?
Yeah. So resurrection comes in two parts. And that's such a loaded term from the Bible, isn't it? Resurrection.
Well, I mean, when I read it in the book, I was like, all right, this got to be one of my questions. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, resurrection we talk about.
Let me ask a different question before you answer that. Are you still religious? I know do you still practice?
I know you
grew up Orthodox Greek.
I did. I was a head altar boy. I was very much. I am spiritual. I believe there is a force that we call God in the universe that is deeply connected to love, and that comes really from the journeys I've done. With DMT, that just connected me in a way that was extraordinary. When we talk about resurrection in the book, we're talking about bringing back extinct animals. This is a dear friend, Ben Lamb, the CEO of Colossal, was one of the earliest advisors and investors. And what he's done is he's brought back the dire wolves. He's got 15 different species he's working on bringing back from extinction in this regard, taking ancient DNA that we find in dig sites and then reconstructing it and giving birth. So bringing back the woolly mammoth, the dire wolf, the dodo bird, So that's one part. There is a lot of work going on right now in cryopreservation. Like at the moment of death, do you freeze your body and put it into a state of effectively suspension until the technology exists to cure whatever killed you and bring you back. But the place I rather focus on, and half my work, as you know, Anthony, is not in that area, but it's in longevity. How do we understand why we age, how to slow it, stop it, even reverse it? And the data is amazing. And again, we dive into this in the book, that we're on the verge of what's called longevity escape velocity, being able to add decades onto your life, that for every year that you're alive, science extends your life for more than a year. And that's an extraordinary time. Now, when is that going to happen? Ray Kurzweil, who's been my mentor, predicts 2033. Just saw Dario speak eloquently about his belief that we could double the human lifespan inside of the next decade. So you and I just need to stay healthy and hang on.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. So Dario, of course, is the founder of Anthropic, who has the incredible AI system known as Claude. But yeah, no, I'm with you. So, but there's tension in the book. When I think about the book, I think about all of this opportunity. And then every time our world goes through a technological transformation, there is some worker and employment anxiety. And so
for sure.
We want humans to retain agency, which you write about. But, how do we retain the agency where we have machines doing most of the cognitive work? Lloyd Blankfein and I were on Bill Maher's show a few weeks back, talking about the anxiety of white-collar jobs, Peter. White-collar jobs are going to go first. What do we say to that 45-year-old middle manager at the regional bank after he reads your book this summer?
And even more for me, what do you say to that 22-year-old college graduate who can't get a job?
Yeah, well, that too. Yeah, that's right. A big issue too. I mean,
and it's true. I mean, my greatest concern right now is, in fact, the loss of jobs. It's the loss of the social contract we've always had: do well in high school, get a good college, get a degree, get a job, and that's vaporizing. That's going away. And I think what's going to need to happen, and so I talk about this. I think we have and I write about this in the book. We're going to have a rough patch for the next 2 to 8 years. I think on the backside of that, 8, 10 years out, we're going to be reaching this period of increasing abundance. I had Elon on my Moonshots podcast twice, and once during the Abundance Summit last March, and he talked about we're going to reach a point where AI and robots, call it for him Grok and Optimus, will be able to produce anything you want in such supply that you could not want enough stuff to fill the production pipelines, right? That's what he calls his, his version of abundance. But we're going to have a challenge when people can't get a job and people are losing their job. And I get it. I relate. There are a couple of things that are important. Number one, I think that the idea of working to go and work for somebody else is going to quickly become the past. I think what we really need to focus on is people utilizing AI to go solve a problem and start a business. I think we're going to start to see companies going from 100% employment down to 20% because that 20% enables them to do everything they're doing before. And that's going to cut down, the number of jobs significantly. Again, we've seen a lot of folks like Dario Amodei and Sam Altman and others say this. But I think we're also going to create 5 times as many companies. I think the ability to create a company is easier than ever before. In fact, I'm getting ready, can't announce it here on the show yet, but getting ready to run a massive X Prize with some of the top tech companies to encourage and show people how easy it is for them to start a revenue generating company. In plain English, you can write up what's your idea, what you think the company should do, how it should operate, and give it to, Gemini and have it code up a company for you. This is where we're heading. So people need to be observant. What are the problems? What do I want to solve? What am I inspired? What's my purpose? And then go build in that regard. The other side, though, pal, is I think we're going to head towards some version of UBI. I think the government's going to start writing checks again like they did in COVID because I don't think they have another choice, at least in the short term. What do you think?
Where are they going to get the money from, though? We're going to tax the robots, Peter?
Yeah, I think we're going to do a couple of things. Number one, we're going to run up the debt because that's been what's been going on. I think we're going to tax the robots and the AI systems. And then I think the other thing that's going on is that companies are going to become much more profitable. You saw what Jack Dorsey did with Square, cut, a significant number of employees and the stock price and the profitability went through the roof. And so those companies, Elon projected, get this, triple digit GDP growth inside the next 5 years. Mm-hmm. Kathy Wood, a friend of ours.
Yeah. Kathy Wood.
Kathy's saying we're going to reach 7% in the next couple of years. Right?
Listen, if you looked at my business, which you and I have talked about, I moved my business into crypto. Like you,
Yep.
I have an investment in Anthropic and SpaceX. Like you, I bought into some of these later stage tech companies. We've owned Astera Labs, things like that. So I have embraced the future. But, you look young, you little bastard. But let me just say this to you.
Buddy.
You're 64. I'm 62. We're the demographic that has to decide right now whether we're betting on the next 20 years of normal aging, Peter Diamandis.
Yeah.
Or are we going to go through something genuinely new? What is that?
We're going
Why
through
you're
some
saying that?
yeah.
Why you're saying it? For those of you that can't see us, I'm making muscles right now. Making muscles, Diamandis. All right, you're looking good there. You got a nice little pop on that bicep.
Yes, I do.
What's
I do.
going to happen,
my
Peter?
Popeye pop.
What's going to happen to old folks like you and me that are young?
We're not going to get older. Here's the deal. We are on the verge, and I had this conversation with Demis Hassabis, the CEO of DeepMind, last Saturday.
And by the way, we had Sebastian Malaby on a week ago talking about Demis and the whole book.
And so we are on the verge right now, next few years, 5 years, 6 years, the utmost of curing cancer. We're seeing breakthroughs every day with CAR T therapies and personal mRNA cancer vaccines. Cancer's days are numbered. On top of that, then comes heart disease and immunological issues. So Demis went on 60 Minutes and he said it very, very bluntly, we're going to cure all disease, not some disease, all disease within the next 10 years. At the same time, we've got a number of companies backed by some of the billionaires out there, folks like George Church and David Sinclair, both at Harvard Medical School, working on reversing aging, not just slowing and stopping aging, but reversing aging, called epigenetic reprogramming. And those trials, which worked in animal models, mice, rats, monkeys, are now in humans. Right now, we're seeing the first humans undergoing what's called partial epigenetic reprogramming, where we're turning back the clock. Here's the deal. When you're born, you got 3.2 billion letters from your mom and your dad. When you're 20, you have the same program. When you're 50, you got the same software. When you're 100, the same software. Why do you look different? It isn't the software you're running in your body. It turns out that software codes for 22,000 genes, roughly. And it's the question, you age when certain genes get turned off and certain genes that should be off get turned on, right? This is your epigenetic drift. And the technology being worked on right now is how do we reverse this, bring you back from where you are today to an earlier state of youthfulness, where you have the correct genes on and the correct genes off. And, you know, the promise here is the potential to bring you and I back to where we are at an age of 40, but still keep our cognitive abilities, our mindset, right? I mean, I think I'm in better shape now than I was much earlier because I focus on it, you know, sleep, diet, exercise, mindset, all these things I care about more now than ever before. But we're going to have help from the technology that's coming.
You've helped me in so many different ways. There was one morning I had breakfast with you. We're downtown at a hotel and you had a packet of supplements.
Yeah.
And you were like, Anthony, you got to get it. And you gave me a whole thing to do. And then I did a blood test. And now I too have a packet of supplements. You know,
good for you,
who
buddy.
the hell knows? All right. But I feel good. Thank God. Knock on wood. Who the hell knows? We'll pray for all of this to happen in our lifetimes. Okay. So we've got a few minutes left.
Yeah.
And what we've done is my producers and we took 5 words out of your book. And I'm going to say the word or the subject, and then I need a sentence from you, like the first thing that comes to your head.
Okay, you got it.
You ready?
Rapid fire, do it.
So let's do it. AI.
The most powerful technology on the planet that we're giving birth to right now.
Dystopian or utopian AI?
Ultimately utopian. Dystopian use by humans, ultimately utopian on its own.
Okay, so we're going to figure it out, right? Okay, so longevity.
Something I desire deeply and I'm focusing on, for 20, 30 hours per week. Yeah.
So we're coming though. Longevity is coming, right?
Coming. It's coming. Expect, if you're in decent health and you're in your 50s and 60s, expect to make it well over 100.
Power.
Energy, ubiquitous, from the sun, fusion, multiple resources, moving to Earth orbit, all that you need.
Humanity.
The most important thing we need to preserve.
Abundance.
Here and growing exponentially.
Okay, well, listen, Peter Diamandis, it's always a pleasure to have you on with me. You know, I love
miss you, buddy.
I love you as a person. I've learned so much from you over the years. The title of the book is We Are as Gods, a survival guide for the age of abundance by Peter Diamandis and Stephen Kotler. Other books that they have written as well are also equally fantastic. But thank you so much for joining us today on Open Book.
Love you, buddy. Be well.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Open Book. Now, I've been seeing all your comments on YouTube, X, LinkedIn, and of course, Instagram. And I've been loving the feedback and questions, the good, bad, and the ugly, by the way, not just the good stuff. And so, as always, thank you. These are the questions that were asked in October. So if I don't answer your question, keep an eye out for my posts in the future and feel free to comment on just about anything you'd like to discuss, whether it's business, politics, personal stories, etc. I'll try to get to you. If I can't get to you here, we'll certainly try to get you on messaging. So let's get going here. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and engaging. It means a lot to all of us here at Team Open Book. You can always click the subscribe button on YouTube or other places. Give us a follow. Let's get started. Okay. We're going to start with YouTube at Galway Bound. How has your faith influenced your life to date? Do you think it's stronger now than in years past? And so it's a great question. I often tell people I'm a practicing Catholic and got raised in a Catholic family. Interesting enough, I didn't go to Catholic grammar school or Catholic high school or anything like that. My parents, frankly, didn't have the money for that. My mother always wanted me to go to Chaminade High School out in Mineola, Long Island, probably one of the best schools in the country as Catholic schools go. But we didn't have the money. So I went to the Port Washington Public High School, but went to church regularly with my mother and my grandmother. And I think, and I say this to people teasingly, but once you're a Catholic, you're sort of always a Catholic. And my faith, like everything in life, I've had times where I've had heavy, near perfect attendance at church, and other times where I've had some laxity with actually going to church. But the truth be told, it's never really affected my faith. I've had a very strong faith in our religion, and very strong belief in God. I find when I'm traveling around the world, some of that has waned around the world. I notice that there's more secularism in Europe, secularism in Asia, etc. But I'm still quite faithful. I do appreciate the question, and it has impacted me. I guess it's given me some resolve or some long-term belief that things will be okay. And so whether you believe like a Catholic, I do, or you trust into the universe, I think one of the best things I could say to people is just fall back in the belief that you're here, you're part of the universe, and you'll stay part of the universe long after you leave here. So anyway, those are my thoughts there. Instagram, this is from @JuniorLinden. What makes you a Republican? Okay, @Junior Linden, let me take a memo and I'll get back to you because I don't know anymore what makes me a Republican. So Republican Party used to stand for some traditional conservatism and business pragmatism. And the Republican Party stood for things like growth. And so if you said to me, what type of Republican am I or was I? I was an Eisenhower Republican, a Rockefeller Republican. Remember, he was somewhat liberal on social issues. He was the governor, Republican governor of New York here for many years, going back into the 50s, early 60s. Ronald Reagan, to me, I don't even know if he would fit the measurement or definition of Republican today, but he was considered a right-leaning Republican 40 years ago. So it's a good question. I guess it's a little bit like sports teams. I'm a Jet and Met fan, so you can imagine how miserable that is. I think these, whether they're businesses, political parties, sports franchises, they ebb and flow. For me personally, I think it's a low point for the Republican Party. But it's not like, let's say you're with Manchester City and all of a sudden you can flip over and be with Manchester United. It doesn't really work like that. So I've been loyal to the party, but more about the traditional party, not the current party. In fact, in many ways, I think the current party's actually moved off of being Republican. So hope that answers that. But I'm going to stay as a Republican and try to seek reform in a post-Trump world. Okay, let's keep going. This is from Instagram. This is Dunn Ellen, I believe. Okay, do you anticipate a civil war in America? So the short answer to that is no, I don't anticipate a civil war. Economic hardship would have to prevail in the society. And yes, not just income inequality, but real sustainable economic hardship that could tip over into a potential civil war or a big ideological fight about the country. But at this point, our temperatures are up. We're sort of fighting with each other. We are keyboard bullying each other. And so there's a hassle there, but I don't see it tipping over into the Civil War. And remember, I think you have still a very strong, reasonably sound economy. If you're telling me that we're going to have extreme deterioration in the economy or something systemic that hurts the economy, then I'll change my tune. But I don't see that right now. Okay, let's keep going. X, this is from Thomas Phillip W. Do you have any favorite books in categories of fiction, investing, history, general nonfiction, and or business history? All right, so let's hit each one of those categories. I'm going to give you some contemporary ideas. And so the brand new book, Circle of Days by Ken Follett, is an amazing book. It actually goes back into ancient England and the whole era around Stonehenge, how Stonehenge was created, what the tribes were like at that point, living on that big, beautiful island. And it's just an amazing story. It's historical fiction, something I adore. And I think Ken Follett's writing style is second to none. He will keep you hooked and you will be learning. Okay, as it relates to investing, I'm a very big believer in the simple books like One Up on Wall Street by Peter Lynch. I also like Morgan Hassel's books, The Art of Spending, as well as The Psychology of Money, which was an international bestseller about 2 years ago. So those are phenomenal books in the category of investing. History, well, you're looking at a huge history buff here. So there's so many things to choose from. What I've read recently is Checkmate in Berlin by Giles Milton. I've read books about the Beatles. There's a great biography about the Beatles by Bob Spitz, which is a phenomenal book. So I'm all over the map when it comes to history, but I've been really focused on World War II, America First by H.W. Brands. What was the rise of nationalism? There was a First America First movement back in the 30s. How did we put that down? I think that's something that I would recommend to people. I thought that was really good. Angry Days by Lynn Olson would be in that category. General nonfiction, to me, I think We the People. This is Joe Lepore. It's a nonfiction book. It's got great insight into the U.S. Constitution, some of the things that we're not doing well at this point in American history, i.e., like amending the Constitution. And if you want a fun book, that's sort of general nonfiction, it's Chaos by Tom O'Neill. That book is awesome. And so, what is Chaos about? It's about the 1960s and Charles Manson, and it's about the counterculture that was taking place in the 1960s. And you may not have thought that this was connected before, but you will after you read the book. What does the Manson movement in California and the CIA have in common? Well, if you read the book, you'll learn about it. It was really a lot of great fun. And so those are the general categories. Business history, of course, I would go with Andrew Ross Sorkin's new book, 1929. It's a long read. It's about 460 pages, but my God, what a story about the mistakes that were made in the late 20s, the euphoria that tipped over into excess leverage, which was combined with a tremendous amount of excess confidence, which led to a debacle. And then we got a lot of things wrong from as it relates to economic policy that led to not only a stock market crash, but an economic depression here in the United States and around the world. So those are some of the ones that I liked a great deal. Let's keep going. This is from LinkedIn. This is Mary Lee Dillon. If you were president, okay, let me make the sign of the cross. Okay. If you were president, what would be the first 5 things you would do to move the U.S. into the future away from the chaos and catastrophe? And how would you start completing those goals? So it's interesting. So if you were even a 5-step program, included in that program would be a series of constitutional amendments that I would propose. And then I would want to also go out and campaign on those. But let's just talk about a few things that you can do. 5 things. So number 1, you use the bully pulpit. Remember what Teddy Roosevelt said about the U.S. presidency. You stand on the bully pulpit and you can command a lot and you can instill values in the nation and guide people through your speeches and sort of your interaction with the American public and the American media, the international media for that matter as well. Second thing that I would want to be doing is I would try to create some level of bipartisanship, and I would get at least 1 or 2 Democrats into the cabinet. I think what we're doing now doesn't make any sense at all. We're either hard right, get the hard right in, implement hard right policies, they lose, then we go hard left, and we've got the business leaders and the culture completely confused. And so I would want to work with the other side to try to see if we can have a breaking of that impasse and some reduction in the tribalism. And then the 3 amendments, just quickly. The first amendment that I would want to the Constitution is we'd have to end the gerrymandering. I know we've been doing it for over 200 years, but it's really not working anymore. We've got to make it more even. And maybe you have it AI generated or algorithmically generated. And just put simply, if you have 40% Republicans in the state of New York, then from the House of Representatives perspective, there should be roughly a proportion of representatives that represent those Republicans instead of trying to jam them and have them always be underrepresented across all the House of Representative districts. Okay, same thing would go for the Democrats in California or the Democrats in Texas. It's an indictment of both sides. Second amendment that I would have in there is I would do something related to Citizens United. And for those of you that don't know what that is, we've allowed unlimited amounts of capital to flow into the political process. And these political action committees, if anything, they've just skewed the legislative agenda to be way more geared towards big business or big pharma or rich people, corporate welfare, etc. I would want to put an end to that. And the third one, and this is going to be the most controversial, but I would want to get the Department of Justice out of the executive branch and make it a little bit more apolitical if that were possible. So those are some of the things I would think about, which I think would help the process. And so you don't have to be president to suggest those things or to help other people work on those things. Okay, let's keep going. Instagram, Sarah Karate. How do you have the time to consume and analyze all the information you consume on top of investing? It's a great question. So 3 hours a day. Say that again, 3 hours a day. So already got up this morning, went to the gym. Guess what I did? I had a book tape in my ear while I was doing my workout and got through 45, 50 minutes of a book. Secondarily, got in the car. Guess what I did? I had a stack of either research papers or a book that I'm reading and kept reading. At some point tonight on the way home or some point tonight before bed, I'll try to get 1 more hour of reading in. Now, Mr. Buffett claims that he reads 6 to 7 hours a day. That's Warren Buffett, one of the richest people in the history of the world and arguably one of the best investors ever. He reads for 6 hours a day. You can read for 3 hours a day. If you do that, you're into a tremendous amount of learning. So 3 hours should be at least a minimum 60 pages. I'd like to say 100 pages. So if you read 3 hours a day, that's 700 pages a week. You can pile through 2 books a week. You get yourself up to 100 books. I don't read 100 books, though. I'm probably reading 50 or 60 because I do feather in the newspaper and magazines and research articles, etc. But get yourself in the habit of reading. Force yourself to listen to book tapes when you're walking or doing your exercise. That's what I would recommend. Okay. What are the best restaurants in New York and Long Island? Well, some of them are private, like Casa Cipriani is private, the Columbus Citizens Foundation, private. But if you can get access to or invited to those restaurants, they're 2 of the best alongside Aziz's. If you can't get in Aziz's, because that's also private, you can go to Carbone, which is their sister establishment, which is an amazing restaurant. People who know me know I love Rayo's, which is probably the oldest Italian eatery here in New York. And it's super hard to get into because they don't even have a telephone number. But those are the things I like. If you've heard only Italian restaurants, that's right. Because when I'm going out, which I rarely do, honestly, because I'm usually traveling, podcasting, out with the kids. But if I'm going out to a restaurant, I like Italian food. So I pretty much stick to Italian food. On Long Island, any of the Pole restaurants in Nassau County, it could be Cipollini's, it could be Bryan and Cooper, it could be a place like Hendricks in Roslyn. All of those are great restaurants. If you notice, I didn't mention my own restaurant. I actually own one called the Hunt and Fish Club on 44th Street. I don't want to be overly biased in terms of mentioning it, but I think the food is great there as well. So those are some from Long Island and some from New York. This is Instagram, Renee H9. What dream guest would you like to have on Open Book? Such a great question. And so, it would have to be a living person, right? So, of course, a living person, I guess the person I would want to interview, at least right now, which even though I extended an invitation, I don't think she's going to accept it, is Kamala Harris. I read the book 107 Days. I have a lot of questions about her campaign, and I would love to interview her. It wouldn't be a hostile interview or anything like that. It would just be more born from intellectual curiosity. At some point, I would also like to interview Joe Biden. Just again, want to understand what they were all thinking in terms of going into the 2024 election and how did they make such massive mistakes. I would certainly want to learn from them and no more. So those are two people right off the top of my head. Here we go. Let's keep going. This is Meg's 369. What are you most proud of in life? So that's such a great question, but I really think it's just tiny things. This is sort of a crazy story. I'm in Dublin, and one of my family members is having dental work done, and the crown, unfortunately, that they're trying to install ends up getting swallowed, but it goes into the trachea and into the lung. I mean, can you believe this story? I'm in Dublin. Someone's calling me. It's 2 o'clock in the morning in Dublin. They wake me up, and can I help them get to the emergency room and get some treatment immediately? Of course, I knew the vice chair of the hospital, so I picked up the phone and called them, got them into the hospital fairly quickly, and got the crown, literally this, I guess, piece of dental apparatus out of the person's lung. That's the thing that I'm most proud of. If I can figure out a way during the day to help somebody. Some people can say they're most proud of their children. Of course, I'm most proud of my children and proud of my family and all that stuff. But what I'm really proud of is, can I get up today and figure out a way that I can help somebody? Can I make somebody's life a little easier? That sort of thing. Okay, let's keep going. This is Carlos Gemino from LinkedIn. What is the key to making progress in life? And if you had to pick one book out of the thousands or the hundreds, which one would you choose as your favorite? So it's interesting. So since it's related to progress, remember, you gotta control your mind first. So if you can control your mind, you can control your body. Okay. And so everything comes from your discussion with yourself about yourself. Who are you going to be? Are you going to do the 50 push-ups in the morning? Are you going to do the 150 push-ups? Are you going to eat less sugar? Are you going to get up after you've been knocked down? How much do you really care about what other people think of you in terms of you reaching your goals? Turns out that no one's really thinking about you anyway. There's these great things that go on Instagram, which I watch, where they say, okay, you're dead. Some of your family members can make the funeral. Some of them can't make the funeral. 2 days later, they're watching funny movies together. They're eating. Yeah, they're going to remember you fondly, maybe a few of them. But in 2 generations, no one's going to remember who you are. So why do you care so much about what the people think about you? So the book that will help you, or helped me the most in that, is Meditations. And in January, every year, at the beginning of the year, I read Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. And so I think that's one of my favorite books about making progress in life. And the first way to make progress in life is right here. You got to get your mind on it, and you got to get your mind on not caring when you have setbacks, but to keep going. Okay, let's keep going here. Instagram, DMS me. What is your solution for solving housing affordability in the U.S.? So there's no easy solution to that. However, there are things that we could do. There's modular housing, there's low-cost housing, there's tracts of land that could be built, okay, fairly inexpensively. They would be small housing apartments. They wouldn't necessarily be, superstar quality or anything like that. But we can do that. The problem that we're having is that we're always in a fight over where these things are going to go, who's going to live in them, what the criteria is for them. But we can solve this problem. It's not an insurmountable problem. Mike Bloomberg, as an example, as mayor of New York, he reduced the homeless population considerably by helping not only to build shelters, but rent-to-own situations or granted situations where people couldn't afford it, but we put them in the housing anyway. I think the problem with shelters, there's crime in the shelters, but you can hive off little individual apartment units now. And again, not super costly, but there's always going to be a big political fight about where they're going to go and who ends up in them in terms of the criteria. So we'd have to work on that. That's something that's very solvable at this point in our civilization. Okay, let's keep going. Mooch, what's the biggest dream that you're chasing? Okay, so that's from my son Anthony. I should give a big shout out to Anthony. The biggest dream that I am chasing right now is to help my children fulfill their dreams. How about that, Ant? Okay, so this is an aspiring filmmaker, my son, who's gotten his short film into Tribeca, and he's done Holly Shorts. He won the Dublin International Film Festival, San Antonio Film Festival. The kid wants to be a director and an actor. And so my goal right now at this stage of my life is to help my kids fulfill their dreams. So hopefully I'm helping you do that, Ant. But that's really the dream that I'm chasing. All right. Henry K. Adams. This is from Instagram. What is the one book that you would recommend all new fathers read? Okay, I'm often asked, what book would you read if you're a new dad or you want to learn about fatherhood or something that impressed you about fatherhood? And this book was written 20 years ago. It was written by Tim Russert. Tim Russert wrote a book about his father, also named Tim Russert. So the title of the book was Big Russ and Me, Father and Son, Lessons of Life. And this was a memoir about their relationship. And I'm going to tell you, it was a brilliant memoir because Russert grew up in a working class family in Buffalo, and his father was a World War II veteran and a blue collar worker. And it was about love, and it was about simplicity, and it was about being present for your children. And sure, you're trying to provide material goods for them and so forth, but you're also trying to, through your work ethic and through you are as a person, you're trying to inspire them, And one of the big lessons in the book is that kids don't listen to what you say, but they sort of observe what you do. And in a lot of ways, if you're doing the right thing in all the different facets of your life, your kids end up modeling it, and they end up picking up a lot of your journey. It imbues in them. And so anyway, the book is great. And I would recommend it to people. It's about patriotism, hard work, self-discipline, and it's also about, how do you become a cool father? You relate to the kid, talk to the kid in a way that expresses unconditional love, and it'll go really, really far. Such a great question, by the way. All right, let's keep going. This is Larry McGinnity. It's also from LinkedIn. With all your experience of trading over the years, do you feel emboldened to trust your instincts more or less than when you started out? Way more. Way more I trust my instincts. When I started out, I was clueless. And when I started out, I let my emotions get the better of me. So when stocks go down, you're supposed to buy them. But when I was a younger person in the industry, I was selling them. And when stocks went up, you're supposed to sell them, or we're going to get into that in a second. But I didn't do that. I started buying them. And so I was upside down on these things because of the way we think about money and psychology. You have to go against the psychological grain. And so the best investors, and I didn't know this at age 30, but I certainly know it at age 61. The best investors sometimes do absolutely nothing. Okay. If you think about holding periods that Warren Buffett has had, or you think about Steve Ballmer, let's talk about the legendary Steve Ballmer. Steve Ballmer, turns out, never sold a share of Microsoft. So he's now richer than his buddy Bill Gates that owned 4 times the amount of shares because he never sold a share. And because it was such a great asset, it's compounded and it's made him, $200 billion. And the point being, I wouldn't have been able to have trusted myself not to sell things back in the day. And so, yes, as you get older, you get more mature, you can trust your instincts more. And I'm not saying you're going to learn this from me because sometimes it's impossible to learn. Most people have to learn the hard way. But if you could learn something from me, buy some great assets, hold the great assets, and train yourself not even to look at them. That would be my best advice. Anyway, let's keep going. YouTube, NJA, Bulamabai 963. I like reading these things. I'm like, who the hell comes up with a name like that? So forgive me. I like reading them. How many books would you say you read per quarter? It's a good question. I'm going to say 15. I'm probably reading about 60 books a year. But remember, that doesn't count magazine articles and newspapers and things like that. Are there any finance academic textbooks you're currently studying? And what are they? So the short answer to that, unfortunately, is no. But if you want to study a really good academic textbook, it's the Brealey and Myers corporate finance book. I think it's in its like 30th edition or something like that. But buy that book. It's an expensive book. If you leaf through that book and you read 5 or 10 pages a week, even in a book like that, you'll be way more knowledgeable than 90% of the people out there in corporate finance. So that's a great book. So I answered the academic textbook question. How do you maintain discipline in your life? Really good question. And so the answer is minute to minute. Pick up Atomic Habits. That's a great book about how a slight change in your habits, just a tiny change, can lead to exponential growth. You need to be maybe 1% better. You're just 1% better, and you compound on that, you become infinitely better over time. So what does that mean? Maybe one less chocolate. Maybe it means one less cup of coffee. It means if you're scheduled to do 30 minutes of exercise, maybe you'll pick up another 6 minutes. That's a 20% increase in your exercise. Push yourself. One of the atomic habits that I've been doing is push-ups and planks. So every night, every morning, when I get up, I do some stretching. I try to do at least 50 to 100 push-ups. And then I do at least 1 to 3 1 to 2 minute planks, depending on how I feel. You do push-ups and planks in the morning, you're way ahead of the game. It takes all of 10 minutes. And this would be an atomic habit, something that James Clear would talk about. But your discipline will come from your habits, of course. And you can change your habits, but think about them incrementally. It'll make it easier to change your habits. All right, these are great questions. Let's keep going. This is from YouTube. Think for yourself, man. I truly enjoyed your little Bitcoin book. Question: if you had to write another chapter to update it, what would you write about? Such a great question. So I think I would want to spend more time on the store of value issue for Bitcoin. I think I did a good job. Well, I'd like to think we did a good job of explaining it, my odyssey into it, why I was determined not to own it for almost 6 or 7 years after I was introduced to it. And now it's a very big component of my net worth. But I think I would like to have another chapter on store of value, why I think people will use Bitcoin as a store of value on a going forward basis. And now, if you look at where gold is, and gold has had a big run this year, but if I'm right on store of value, Bitcoin could trade at least to the market capitalization of gold, which is at least a 10 or 12x from here. So I probably would add that chapter. Again, a great question. From LinkedIn, Matthew Sutton, you've experienced massive wins and very public setbacks. When you're hit with a failure in business or life, what's the process of bouncing back quickly and regaining credibility? Okay, amazing question. I guess the answer is what I said about your habits. Like, you can't give up. You can't be a person that says, I'm going to give up. But I was looking at these questions earlier today. So I asked ChatGPT, I said, so what, the Scaramucci case for reinvention? Just threw it out there. I want to see what they said. And they said, own the narrative, which I think is interesting, right? Remember, the fight, you want to have a comeback story, fights inside your brain. Henry Ford once said, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So start thinking that you can and manifesting that you can. And so I try to do that. And I answered, face the music, be accountable. You have a setback or a failure. I sold a piece of my business to Sam Bankman-Fried. I explained why I did it. I explained why it was a mistake, but I didn't hold on to it. You can't hold on to your shortcomings or hold on to your failures. And by the way, if you think you're the only person that's made a failure of yourself or done something stupid, then you don't understand what's going on out there. Now, mine have probably been more public than other people, but so what? I don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, made a mistake, got myself fired from the White House. Let me kick myself in the pants again. I'm just not doing that. You shouldn't do that. And I think that's the way you come back. It's always a fight with yourself more than anything else. Okay, let's keep going. YouTube DK Rowan, number 17. Who are you supporting for mayor and why? So I was asked this question last month. I said Andrew Cuomo, and I still am supporting Andrew Cuomo. The election is in 2 weeks. I'd like to see Andrew win because I think he has the experience, and I think he's also had some political setbacks that's made him a wiser, more mature person. I would like somebody like Andrew helping the police department and make the city cleaner. Remember, Andrew started a homeless shelter 35 years ago, so he actually even understands how to address the homeless situation in the city. And generally, when he was governor, he generally did a good job. However, affordability is a big issue right now, and Mondami has run a good campaign. Whether you like or dislike him, he's run a good campaign. He has popularity. And I'll say something to you that Jamie Dimon said. If he does win, and I still predict Andrew will win, I think he'll upset Mondami. But if Mondami does win, I will raise my hand and I will do the best I can to try to help him because I think we owe that to each other in our lives, particularly us that live here in the city of New York. I'm not saying he'll accept my help, but I think you have to think like that. Okay, YouTube, Matt's on 9999. Are traditional retirement accounts at risk with the increasing national debt and the chaotic national leadership? Well, yeah, the obvious answer is yes. Can't have a national debt that goes completely out of control and we end up with a 200 or 250% debt to GDP ratio. Okay, we're at ridiculously high levels now, levels that we haven't seen since the end of the Second World War. And so all I'm saying to people is we've got to get the debt under control. Because if you don't get the debt under control, you're going to create hyperinflation and you're going to monetize that debt by just creating more dollars. Said differently, you'll create a $34 trillion coin and you pay off the debt. And then everybody's poorer, everybody's weaker, and you've really debased the currency. And so, yes, I think people have to know that they should pick up the phone and call their congressmen or their senators and say, hey, what are we doing about the debt? We got to get it under control. We got to have a 25-year plan to get it under control. Because if we don't do that, what's going to end up happening is we're going to hyperinflate to get ourselves out of the debt. And so we definitely don't want that. But if you're asking me straight up, are they at risk? I do. I do think they are at risk. This is from Scott Schneider, I-7T. Man, I would love to be asking these questions like, what does I-7T mean to Scott Schneider? But my story, it says, your story is unique, Anthony. Your path is atypical. Your mind is clearly a thoughtful one. Well, thank you. I'm not sure that this is a question, but perhaps you might share something about your political journey, where you came from with your thinking and where you are now. What would you like to see for our shared future? And where is the soul of America? How we might course correct. So this is such an amazing question or observation, guys. Let me just say this, and I don't want to be hagiographic about America. I want to tell you, like, if you read Jill Lepore's book, These Truths, we have a soaring, idealistic history, and we have this very cynical, sordid, tragic history combined. And so we have soaring rhetoric about freedom, a decentralized government, lots of freedom in the country that's led to meritocracy. And then contemporaneous to that, we had people enslaved, and we've had institutional forms of racism that have really set back Black and brown people. So we have this whole combination of things going on at once. But what we stopped doing is we stopped unifying to make our union more perfect. Now, I'm not saying it is perfect. We're just trying to make it more perfect. We're trying to make it slightly better. And so for me, when I sit back and look at my life or look at the traditional values of the family I grew up in or the unconditional love affair that my grandparents had with the country, what I would say to you is we need more civic duties in the country, and we need more civic responsibilities in the country. And we need to put people from California together with the people from the Dakotas and the New Yorkers together with the people from the South. And we need to recognize that we have one common identity as Americans. And we need to recognize that it's okay to live an alternative lifestyle than the one that we ourselves are living. And if we do those things, geez, I think we're going to be way, way better off. And unfortunately, our leadership lately has decided that the way to get power is to express divisiveness and to divide us. And so I don't see that as America long term. So, any event, that's my thoughts there. All right. That's a wrap today for the question and answer episode on Open Book. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I thought there were some great questions, some of which I had to really step back and think about. And remember, I am reading all your comments. I'm going through the comments primarily because my producers are yelling at me too. And so I'll listen, the good, bad, and the ugly. You don't like what we're doing, tell us. We'll try to change it if we agree with you. So tell us what's on your mind. Keep sending the questions. And if I missed your question, we'll be back next month with another round of answers. And in the meantime, please, somewhere down here, or maybe it's up there, or maybe it's over here. I don't know where it is. Hit the button, subscribe. Okay. You'll get a notice that we're on. It'll help us with our ratings. It'll help us with our YouTube algorithm. I mean, be a pal. You're asking the questions. You're coming on to listen. So hit the button somewhere, please. Until then, let's keep the conversation